He wasn't even surprised when Mingyu spoke up before him since he'd been subconsciously holding on to the firm belief that nothing would go wrong as long as they were together. The rest of this work week in Japan for a literary conference sounds more like a holiday than actual work, doesn't it, Won Young? Wait, week? Japan? Conference? Holiday? One's perplexed brain failed to make any logical connection between the words, but it seems like Mingy wanted him to agree to something, judging by his excited tone. And since one was pre-programmed to fulfill all Mingyu's wants, the answer became clear to him, even when the question was anything but. Therefore, despite his jumbled mind, Wonu nodded his head. They both smiled and looked almost relieved at seeing Wanu's small nods. Well then, gentlemen and lady, you should get an email with the flight and accommodation details, as well as the conference timetable and panel layout in the next hour. So that will be all. I have you have a great time in Japan and represent ladies with pride. I have faith with you all. He looked pointedly at each of them as he closed the impromptu meeting, and one almost shied away from the intense scrutiny. But he held his ground and nodded firmly instead. Joshua seemed pleased with that, and they were dismissed soon after. One stood outside the office, feeling slightly confused, not yet realizing the extent of this horrific situation that he'd willingly put himself in. He scratched his head while he pouted in thought. I'm going to Japan for a 4 day conference. His gaze fell to his polished dress shoes, and he closed his eyes while his heart began to hammer harshly. I already agreed to this. Ono couldn't keep himself calm. His pinky twitched and his chest constricted in pure anxiety at the alarming thoughts that his brain supplied. The conclusive nature and the finality of this world terrified him. One was going to a strange land far away from home, where he'd expected to socialize with strangers for 4 whole days. At that moment, his heart either stilled in his chest or began to beat out of control, and it was his ears that chose to block the sound, because either way, he couldn't hear it anymore. In fact, he couldn't hardly hear anything except the loud voice in his clouded, barely conscious brain. And he didn't know if he was panicked enough yet, but he really wanted to faint. Fortunately, before he could explore his anxiety deeper and allow it to consume him entirely, he felt a change. The corners of his mouth instinctively pulled into a smile, and as his mind cleared up and his heartbeat slowed down from its defeating loudness, the reason behind his receding anxiety became very obvious, because he could hear it clearly now. Mingyu's lovable laughter had permeated the air around him and unblocked his stress-clogged ears. Breathing became easier almost instantly, and he took a deep breath while his tense shoulders lost some of their stiffness. One who looked One who looked up just in time to see Mingyu exit Joshua's office with the other two employees, watched from a safe distance as the three took turns between chatting amicably and listening attentively to each other. Something one would struggle doing without feeling awkward and uncomfortable. That why he normally took the straightforward, rigid approach in dealing with people, because to him small talk was pointless and difficult. But to Mingyu, he thought the reverse was true. It seemed to come effortlessly, seeing how the younger did it so well, and one who observed them with a small smile of his own as his smiley boyfriend firmly shook hands with them before they disappeared down the hall. Not even a full second had passed by when Mingyu's had turned to him. Their eyes met, and Wano felt the loving warmth radiate from the younger brown orbs, encouraging his heart to slowly unwrap itself from its tight coil of anxiety. Oh dear. Oh dear. But a clearer head meant more room for him to fill with more disturbing thought, and he realized his impending doom all over again. One was going to be on a plane to Japan within the next day. He was leaving people, places, and everything he knew behind. Granted, it would only be for a few days, and he technically shouldn't be overacting as much as he was, but he couldn't help feeding his concerns, and they grew with the attention. A few days was still over half a week of waking up in strange bed. It was over 90 hours in a strange land of eating foods and hearing sounds that he was unaccustomed to, of getting dragged into unavoidable and uncomfortable situations. Will he be getting any sleep? Will he be able to enjoy himself when nothing felt familiar? On a scale of homesick to severely homesick, how homesick how would he be? This was usually the point when his mind succumbed to the panic and he regressed into depressing thoughts. But with each step Mingyu took in his direction, the opposite happened, and he relaxed. It felt as though the younger was erasing his worries one by one, the reduction in the distance between them representing the retreating of his negative feelings, until they were almost chest to chest in the desert hallway, and one forgot what he'd been so worried about in the first place. Because Mingyu was coming too. Mingyu will be here with him. What else was there for him to long for? What else could he possibly need? He thought hard, but nothing came to mind. One couldn't think of anything he currently had here that Mingyu wouldn't be able to somehow provide. And with that final thought, he felt more at peace. He stretched his arm over his head and sighed as he looped them around his taller boyfriend's neck, leaning into his warmth and smiling when Mingyu chuckled and squeezed him back tightly. You okay? He felt the question whispered against his neck, and he hummed in answer, closing his eyes and enjoying the feeling of Mingyu's gentle fingers as they combed the hair on the back of his head. You weren't paying attention in Josh Young's office. It was a quiet observation, but as Mingyu pulled it away, one who saw the question in the younger eyes as they gleamed with interest. His tone was soft when he answered honestly, briefly noticing that it came much easier these days. I wasn't. I didn't expect to see you there. I got distracted with my thoughts. Mingyu's arms were still tightly wound around one's waist, and he felt them pulling his body impossibly closer. At the same time, the younger's amused face lowered to his own until there was barely a few inches of space between their noses. That's off. Mingyu Bradley words were his cue to say something sweet and romantic, but he laughed instead, because Mingyu was always giving him hints like this, and the fact that the younger still insisted on him saying things whilst fully knowing exactly what he was going to hear, was quite endearing. It felt like it only mattered if it came out of one's mouth. Like nothing had meaning until he heard it in person, even though he knew it all. Why do you enjoy asking a question with obvious answers? One noticed as he leaned in closer. You know exactly what I was thinking of? Oh, salah, salah, salah. You know exactly what I was thinking of, he whispered, deliberately brushing their noses together and watching a pretty blush spread over the golden skin of his boyfriend's cheeks. I still want to hear it though. Tell me. I was thinking how happy I am to have the most perfect person in the world as my boyfriend. Mingyu clamped his eyes shut and almost squealed at the unexpectedly elaborated and detailed answer. Edwin was beaming with pride for causing Mingyu to react in such an unrestrained way. Not that the younger was one to restrain himself normally, but he was usually more of a smooth charmer than a philosopher.